Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. When you look at my podcast description, it'll show you hockey, baseball, basketball, football. And yeah, I like to talk about all the sports, as many as I can. Loved what I saw from the Raptors yesterday. I'm going to do some thoughts later in the show. But really, this is a show for just sports fans. Try to keep my finger on the pulse of what it is that the average sports fan is really talking about. And we've got the World Series tomorrow. So that's what everybody's talking about. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Most of these shows right now are just, hey, what's interesting right now about these games? It's just set them up, knock them down, easy situation. I've got 3 things that I'm thinking about ahead of the playoff roster announcement, which is tomorrow at 10 a.m. We've got some pretty good clues, but there's 3 things that still really need to be addressed, and I'm going to talk about them coming up. And I'm going to have Jon Morosi on. But, so I keep my DMs open. I try to respond to as many people who message me as possible. I will say that, you try to just get into a sports debate with me and the DMs I don't know, probably not going to happen. I've had some weird requests. But overall, I try to solicit what other people are thinking about and what other people are talking about. Because that's such a huge part of the fun for me. What's everybody doing? How is everybody celebrating this? What are we talking about? I've had so many producers and so many people that I've worked with, or so many people that are just even fans, tell me, oh, well, I just have my dumb conversations with my dumb buddies. And I go, yeah, that's actually the best. That's the best thing. You've got it. The dumb conversations that you're having with your friends are the things that I'm trying to blow out onto this show, but maybe break them down in a more articulate way. Let's put it that way. And there is a tremendous amount of excitement for this baseball team and for the run that they are on. But what I have seen in the last couple of days from just about everybody I know, whether it's friends reaching out or whether it's the conversations in the DMs or on Twitter, whatever, has been about the secondary ticket market. And I got to talk about it because it's nuts. It's absolutely insane. And we have normalized this behavior. I am not a government intervention guy. I am not a regulate capitalism guy. That is not who I am. I believe in free markets. But this is something that I think has gotten to a point now where it absolutely needs to be addressed. You have a nation of fans that are on fire right now. And everybody knows the game. Like, you try to get in. Like the Blue Jays did the added thing of a district drop, which worked out for a lot of different people. It's a huge stadium. Everyone has the understanding that the deeper that you go, the more expensive the ticket is going to be. The higher the event, the more expensive the ticket is going to be. But we're talking about markups here that are completely out of whack with reality. And the reward for a sports fan who invests countless hours and dollars to tickets through a regular season and dollars to merchandise and who follows and listens along with podcasts and spends copious amounts of hours discussing with friends should not be missing out on a ticket on Ticketmaster and then having to go to a secondary ticket market where they're being asked $2,000 for a seat in the 500 level of the Rogers Center. It isn't right. And this won't get through to anybody. This will probably be me just screaming into the wind, screaming at a cloud, screaming into the sky, whatever, however you want to put it. But I think what is probably most upsetting is that there is clearly a black market of people who are predatory, who want this, who thrive in this, and who are trying to capitalize on the emotions and the love of diehard sports fans. And yeah, like that's a lot of the business model for all of this, right? Like everybody's going to be into trying to make a buck. But if you are sitting there trying to grab tickets, desperately trying to get them, with the sole purpose of flipping them for, again, $2,000 for a 500 level ticket, you belong in moon jail. I'm at the point now where when you see something like this, you get a little optimistic. You have to be a little hopeful and say, all right, as depressing as it is to see fans priced out this way by ticket providers that were essentially supposed to provide people who could not use their ticket with an outlet to get rid of it. This was designed to help remove scalpers, people who were, again, predatory. When I was a kid, that was viewed as like a taboo thing that you would go to a stadium and outside there would be a guy in a trench coat who would sell you a ticket and maybe that thing wouldn't even get you in the building. It was illegal. Ooh, what's a scalper? And we have turned it into something so much worse. No scalper in their right mind would be asking for these kind of tickets. This isn't a reality. No one's going to spend a mortgage payment or should be spending a mortgage payment on a sporting event. They're game ones and game two of a World Series. People have been waiting their whole lives for this. And I find it really sickening. And I don't see how there is any positive value out of what this has become. And so, yeah, it has now reached a point where the hopefulness sets in is that this is a wake-up call for the live event crowd at large, who I think post-COVID were desperately looking to go to these things. It became about experience culture because people my generation, we can't afford to buy a home. It's insanely difficult to try to accomplish the life that you thought was promised to you growing up with kind of the Canadian dream. And so we've pivoted to experience economy. People, especially millennials, younger, that's sort of what it is. Go to things. You only live once. Hey, you can't take it with you kind of mentality. And ticket prices across the board have gone up for concerts, whatever. You're paying astronomical values. And we've used all these apps and it's become normalized to just go out and say, well, yeah, I'm paying a little too much money, but that's just the way that this is. But the Blue Jays World Series, again, is an eye-opener. It is kind of a tipping point moment for me. I desperately hope that this is a tipping point moment for some form of intervention. Because again, I don't understand for the life of me how a service that was created to remove scalpers and to encourage people who just, again, were trapped and could not go to an event to be able to flip their ticket to a stranger because not everyone in their circle is just able to sell a ticket to a friend or a family member or, again, times are tough. You got to be able to sell your ticket. Not everyone's in a position to just give them away. But why a cap on this can't make some form of sense? I don't understand. I don't. I get it. You go, JD, free market. The ticket is worth. Yeah, but it was already set at a certain price. It was already set there. It's not going to gain in value. You're not investing in something. Like, yes, of course, it will gain in sentimental value to you, but like, why are you able to mark up a ticket for 10 times the price? Why are you able to stone cold look at people and put on an app that you're going to ask for over $10,000 for a sporting event ticket that's going to last, around 3 hours? It's just, it's lunacy to me. And so my hope is, again, that there's some form of regulation on these secondary ticket markets because they obviously needed to feel as though scalping was an issue. And this has gotten worse. And I'm truly heartbroken for the amount of people that have reached out to me and been like, yeah, I tried to play the game. I thought I did everything right. Now I'm sitting here refreshing an app over and over and over again, only to see what? $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to sit up in the nosebleeds. It ain't right. It ain't right. So yeah, if you're one of those people and you happen to be listening to this show where you bought that ticket with the sole purpose of flipping it, I don't agree with you, to put it lightly. Okay, three quick things before I get to Jon Morosi about what I'm thinking with this playoff roster ahead of time. Number one is Bo. Bo is everything right now. It's Bo, 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 yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. And to be honest, I'm actually a little surprised by the conversation because everyone was desperately waiting for Bichette to return. And it was always under the idea that this guy was not going to be 100% healthy and that there was going to be a difficult acclimation process for this player who was not going to be able to just go down to the minors and do a rehab stint, which is what you do in baseball. It's not like other sports, like with the NBA or the NHL, where you just like jump right back into the action and expect that you'll find your feet on the fly. Baseball is, hey, you got to get your timing down. Hey, rhythm. Hey, make sure that you're feeling right at the plate. Bo Bichette was the American League hit leader when he left. He led the league in doubles. The Los Angeles Dodgers employ the best pitching staff in all of baseball, best starting pitching staff in all of baseball, historically good starting pitching staff. And you have removed the biggest part of the Bo Bichette return, which is, hey, if he comes back too early and he ends up getting re-injured, you can't use him in the next series. All along, if you recall, when he first got hurt, there was an IKF quote of, hopefully we can get deep enough where Bo Bichette can return. And everyone agreed with that. And maybe I'm strawmanning this a little bit because I'm sure there are not that many people who feel as though, say, Joey Loperfido should be on the playoff roster over Bo Bichette. But there seems to be a little bit of hand-wringing about what you end up doing with the player. And I get that part of it. It's a little bit of an awkward fit, right? George Springer has been a DH all season long. He has thrived in that role. The Blue Jays have been reluctant to use him in the outfield all season. They were reluctant to use him in the outfield during the playoffs when they deployed Anthony Santander, who someone told me that he's better by the numbers than George Springer playing the outfield, but the eye test certainly does not back that up. I trust George Springer infinity times more than I trust Anthony Santander in the outfield. I think the question is going to come down to, what is Springer's knee like? Can he move around? Because the one piece of this that I think should be pretty conclusive is that Bo Bichette is not playing shortstop. And friends and family and fans have been reaching out to me like, oh, don't you think you need Jimenez there? And I go, yeah, I do. I think Andres Jimenez is now an everyday player for the Toronto Blue Jays. And that Bo Bichette is here to be a DH. But what is Springer's knee like? How is he recovering from that ball that he took to the knee that Seattle Mariners fans celebrated openly? I'm not sure. But what I would say is that for game one against Blake Snell, the dominating lefty who has been absolute nails throughout the postseason, he is like a George Springer caliber pitcher in terms of guy that you want in the postseason because seems to just come up clutch over and over and over again. And God, it's got to be killing all 12 Tampa Rays fans watching him deal late into ball games and continue to dominate all the way through. But if you're asking me like what the day one lineup looks like against Blake Snell, it's as many right-handed bats as possible. It's actually not a Lucas game. Varsho is definitely in there. Jimenez is definitely in there. But the other guys are removed and Bo Bichette is in. Bo Bichette is in. He is your DH. And George Springer is playing in right field. And is it clunky? Is it awkward? Does it diminish one of the things that makes your team special, which is their defense and especially their outfield defense? Absolutely. But we've seen it in this postseason with Vladdy. And I know Ernie Clement has been a hero in the bottom of the lineup, has had their heroic moments. But when you're talking about facing the best of the best pitching in Major League Baseball, you need to have the best of the best hitting, and that is what Bo Bichette is. And I'm not worried about switching up the vibe, as some people have put it. Or don't you think that you're what's the word? Rocking the cart? No. The apple cart? I don't know. Something like that. Whatever the apple cart happened back in the day that somebody tipped, rock the boat. That's one I know. I'll just say rock the boat. That makes sense. Don't rock the boat. Yeah, absolutely rock the boat if you can inject one of the best hitters in all of baseball into your lineup, and especially when you're talking about game one against, again, one of the most clutch left-handed pitchers in all of baseball. Question number 2, who starts game one? Easy peasy. I think Blue Jays fans have gotten themselves up in a knot because they saw Logan Gilbert not look the same when he pitched against the Toronto Blue Jays because of a couple of days before he had to give over 30 pitches for the Mariners to get past the Detroit Tigers in the American League Divisional Series. I don't view this as the same thing. The rest is longer. The pitcher has performed better, and he threw fewer pitches. It's a kind of a case closed story. I get the Savage part of it where you go, well, don't you want to have the, like both these guys reverse splits, like they're both big, tall guys who throw the splitter, and that's tough for left-handed hitting. So if you're trying to game this out for a Shohei Ohtani or a Max Muncy or a Freddie Freeman, I feel great about Kevin Gausman. He's been the Blue Jays' best pitcher this postseason, and that's with Trey Savage having 2 unbelievable starts. So it's Gausman for game 1 for me. And then lastly, sneaky big question is, what are you doing with Brendan Little? Because he stunk. And it hasn't been good. And the splits against right-handed pitching specifically are quite telling over the last couple of months. They're awful. He just got lit up. And it wasn't even that he gave up the Cal Raleigh home run. It was that he walked the next 2 batters. And that's something that he's prone to do. But if you've watched the postseason and more than just the Blue Jays, what you've seen is Shohei Ohtani struggled at the plate up until his final game, where he hit 3 home runs and he threw 100 miles per hour, and everyone called it the greatest playoff performance of all time. And it happened right after the Mariners game. Or sorry, no, yeah, after Jays Mariners. They need high relief or high leverage relief pitching from the left side in this series. When you get to the top of the order and it ends up being Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman, you got to have nasty lefties. And Mason Fluharty has obviously performed well, but this team's been reluctant to use Eric Lauer in leverage. They've certainly been extremely reluctant to use him in any type of situation where there are runners on base. And so what ends up happening with a guy that twice in the Mariners series ended up hurting you when his job was to get big outs? John Schneider says he always trusts his guys and he's going to go back to his guys, but it does feel a little complicated to me right now because, yeah, he could end up being a World Series hero, but who in their right mind wants to see that situation right now? Anyways, Jon Morosi of MLB Network, he joins me now. What's up, John? How we doing, buddy?
JD, I'm outstanding, my friend. Happy World Series.
Yeah, it's nice to say happy World Series to me and have it be the team that I enjoy being in it. It's a very nice change of pace, my friend. Okay, so let's start with this because everybody's talking about Bo, and based on what we're seeing on the field right now and how he's running, it would be kind of crazy to think that he's not going to be on the World Series roster. A guy that's announcing, hey, I'm ready to play, and who's a pending free agent and one of the faces of the franchise. If he says he's good to go, I don't see the Toronto Blue Jays saying to him like, no, sorry, we just don't think you're ready. So the bigger question becomes, all right, then what is the role? And subsequently, is George Springer's knee up to playing in the outfield?
I think all these things are the most important questions, JD, and I was listening carefully as you were laying it all out, and I think you're asking all the right questions, and the Jays have about, as we speak, another 24 hours before they have to make that decision. And this variable about Springer playing the outfield is a very, very important one because there's a handful of things that we know for sure. For sure, George Springer's in the lineup. We obviously know that. And for sure, Andrés Giménez is the shortstop. That cannot be debated anymore. He's too important. Anybody that watched the last couple series, especially the last one, and saw the at-bats that he put out there in huge spots and saw the defense, the number of times that the Jays infield defense bailed out Savage in game 6, we might not be having this conversation if it weren't for the infield defense in game 6. And that included IKF and Giménez and Clement. That's your second base, shortstop, third base, I think without much debate. It's too important to the team right now. So if George is well enough to play the outfield, then I think that you certainly consider the possibility of Bo as the DH, George and right, and then you're probably, and then this is where it becomes interesting, I guess you would consider either sitting Lucas or Barger. Potentially it's Lucas, but I because you've actually had Barger get more at bats against left-handed pitching in the postseason than Lucas has. So Barger has more at bats against lefties than Lucas. So maybe that's how you do it. But I think that you're asking all the right questions. I saw the same video you did yesterday on MLB Network Ballpark Cam of Bo taking mock at bats and running the bases. Looked pretty good.
Yep.
I thought at least looked playable to
Yep.
me when you consider how good his bat is against left-handed pitching. So I think if he keeps trending in that direction, again, they've got about 24 hours to make the choice on the roster, and then another few hours to make the choice on the lineup. To me, I think it's the opening is there for Bo to be in the lineup for game one. And I think that it's almost certain, maybe it's strong language, but I just think that based on the way that he's trending, he deserves a spot on the roster because it looks like day by day by day, he's getting to a better and better position to be good to go for the World Series.
Yeah, I think that again, that him being on the roster is now a near certainty, if not already just an actual certainty.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I
Right.
find most interesting about this is you're talking about game one with it being Blake Snell, and it puts this little added pressure on the Blue Jays to try to put as many quality right-handed bats into their lineup as possible. And when we're looking at this, it's like, I think you can take out Barger and you can take out Lucas. Like, you can deploy Davis Schneider in this game. You can, or start him. You can start Bo Bichette in this game as the DH and have an outfield that has two right-handed hitters and Dalton Varsho in center field and have IKF play second base and Ernie Clement play third. And to me, if you're fully healthy, that's the no-brainer. It just remains the question of George was reported to be in a hospital at, I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning when they flew back from Seattle. And if you watched him in that series, take the first few at-bats that he had, he did not look like a fully healthy guy. That's part of the like astounding piece of the story of him hitting that home run that I do think is like being a little left out is this guy's at-bats were not looking good. It got to the point where genuinely intelligent observers were looking at it and saying, maybe he's not ready. And so, again, you were a guy that was very on top of the Bichette situation from the very outset. You like had the initial reporting on what was going on with this knee and, hey, this is not looking so great. Do you have any feel as to the severity of Springer's knee and how he's recovered over the last few days?
It's a remarkable story, JD, what George has been able to do. I think that he, first of all, has credited the training staff and their ability to make sure that he was as healthy as he could be to be able to get out there. And you're right. I think that what we saw from him early in game 6, a couple stumbles, he was not really able to, you could tell, fully accelerate on his leg. It looked a lot better in game 7. I think the adrenaline kicked in when you just watched him round the bases on the homer.
Yeah.
He didn't break stride. He wasn't really limping. It was actually, I think the euphoria of that moment probably allowed him to run a little better than he was.
Yeah, that's better than any cortisol shot that you're going to be able to take.
Right,
It's like, that's
exactly.
number one, that adrenaline shot.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So you could tell he was quite comfortable by the time the moment arrived to run around the bases. It was a really extraordinary, and I would describe almost Gibson-esque. And to be fair, we saw Freddie Freeman. If you think back to the reporting on what he was going through last year, and barely able to, in some cases, walk and run, and then he hits the home run in Game 1 of the World Series. That was also Gibson-esque. We've had almost back-to-back years now where these iconic postseason moments and home runs have been hit by guys that were severely physically compromised. And I think that it is said often this time of year, everybody's playing through something. I mean, this was a big something. This was a more than just a trivial amount of pain that George was going through. So it to me speaks to the quality of his character and the person to get back on the field and do it for his team. I believe that the time off has probably been good for him to at least rest and recuperate a little bit more. And I think too, you also mentioned something earlier on about getting as many right-handed bats in there as possible. And I think that's true. I'd also point out, I was looking through the numbers of the postseason overall against left-handed pitching. Barger actually has more at-bats against lefties than Schneider does. Now, Schneider's 2 for 3, Barger 1 for 4. Small sample size and everything, but basically my point here is the Jays have shown that they're quite willing to let Barger face lefties. I think a bit more than Lucas. So there is a little distinction there where I think Barger's ability to face lefties is a little bit more. I mean, again, it's small sample sizes, but the Jays have not exactly been rushing to get pinch hitters in the game when Barger has faced left-handed pitching. I think that's something to point out there a little bit. But I think in general, this Jays team, especially if Bo is able to go, it's about as full strength as we've seen them in a while.
Mhm.
And I think that they have a legitimate shot in this World Series, much more than people are giving him credit for. I think in some ways, when you consider just what they had to go through against the Mariners, a really good pitching staff there in Seattle that they were able to beat in 7 games. They're tested. They beat, especially the last 2 rounds they went through. I mean, you go to the Yankees, you clinch that series on the road against the defending American League champions, and then you go and earn a 7-game series win after looking pretty flat for the first 2 games there against Seattle. I'm thoroughly impressed with the way the Jays navigated. I mean, they took 4 out of 5 games to end that series. It's pretty darn impressive against what I thought was a really well constructed team in Seattle,
Yep.
and they're ready for this World Series.
John, the Jays are hitting almost 300 as a team this postseason.
Hmm.
Like,
It says a lot.
yeah, if you're counting them out, yeah, I think you're out of your mind. I don't think that you're
You haven't been
paying
paying attention. I mean,
Yeah,
like
that's it.
that's the thing. I mean, anybody that says this is a lopsided
Yep.
World Series matchup, they just haven't been paying attention. These are 2 really great teams. I get it. The Dodgers have lost 1 game. I know. They're a really strong team. But look at the score lines of sort of the initial games against Milwaukee. I mean, it's not as though the Dodgers were winning these games 15-1. I mean, these were competitive games. The Brewers, and I think that the point I want to make about the Milwaukee pitching staff is their starters in 4 games totaled 9 2/3 innings.
They had one
Okay?
starting pitcher.
Right. So what the Jays have is, and this is to me the really important thing, and we'll see how it all plays out, obviously. But how well do the Jays game 1 and game 2 starters with those splits do against the Dodgers lefty bats? Because the way I've been describing this is the Mariners had Cal Raleigh that you were really worried about. His lefty at bats against right-handed pitching, like and Naylor to an extent as well. So basically,
Yeah.
Raleigh and Naylor, and that was almost enough to get the Mariners to the World Series. Those 2, and you mix in some J-Rod obviously as well. But it's as if when you consider when Ohtani's really going and when Freeman is really going, it's actually a fairly analogous case here in terms of the damage that Shohei was able to do. Obviously, he had a 3-homer game, but if you look at the totality of him in the postseason, are his numbers really that much above and beyond what Cal Raleigh did, right?
No.
And at least in the postseason, and then are Freeman's numbers really that much above and beyond what Naylor did? I mean, it's there are some analogous elements of the Mariner lineup to the Dodger lineup, and certainly Max Muncy is someone that's got a lot of big postseason moments too. Again, it is a formidable lineup, but I think it's glossing over the challenge of the Mariners a bit if you say, "Wow, the Jays have never seen anybody quite like this." I mean, I don't know. It's look at the Mariner lineup and the power they got from Naylor and from Raleigh, and it's a little bit comparable. The biggest thing I think is that the difference is, and where the Dodger lineup is a little different from the Seattle lineup, is the supporting cast, the guys like Edman,
Yes.
the ability to build rallies. I think what to me decided this World Series or the American League Championship Series to lead into the World Series was the ability of the Jays to build rallies in Game 3 and Game 4 in Seattle. And those rallies started with the bottom third of the Jays lineup. And that is to me the difference between the Toronto lineup and the Seattle lineup was that. And I think that the Jays will be seeing a bit of a mirror image of themselves with the Dodgers' ability to put the ball in play being a little bit better than what the Mariners did. So that's going to be the challenge, is that it's going to be a tougher bottom half of the Dodger lineup to have to figure out. I mean, we've seen, good at-bats from guys like Andy Pages during the course of the postseason. Obviously, we haven't talked about Mookie Betts yet. It's a really, really good lineup, but it's one that I think this is a matchup that the Jays absolutely have the chance to win. They really do, in a way that I think a lot of observers are just they're not seeing the full picture of how great this Jays team is.
Yeah, no disrespect to Rivas, who was the hero for the Seattle Mariners in the series against the Tigers. Canzone, and I like JP Crawford. I think that he's a really good player. He made some outstanding plays in the field against Toronto, but there really was a let up in their lineup. And you felt it when you were watching these games. Like, just get to that part and make sure that you navigate that well. And the Blue Jays did throughout the entire series. Whereas Toronto ended up getting 2 huge home runs from Andres Jimenez in this series. They ended up having the 2 guys before the Springer leadoff, like Springer's the leadoff hitter. The 2 guys that got on ahead of him were 7 and 8. And you're right. The Dodgers absolutely are a team where it's like Kike Hernandez is clutch in the postseason. And you mentioned Pages. Man, he had the kind of season where I think he would have been in the middle of the order for a lot of the teams that were in the postseason. So, yeah, they're far scarier. You're right about Toronto's pitching matchup. I don't think that the Dodgers have faced a staff like Toronto's. Certainly not the first 3 that they can throw out there. The question becomes, who pitches game 1? It would seem like an obvious certainty that it would be Kevin Gausman, but you do mention the lefties, and Trey Savage does have just terrific numbers against left-handed hitters. You would think maybe they would try to get cute. Maybe Kevin Gausman's inning that he ended up having to pitch in Game 7 of the CS would factor into this decision. But is your read of the situation that, yeah, Kevin Gausman will be announced as the Game 1 starter?
I think it's likely. I would say that's I'm not certain of it, but I think that's where I would lean toward. I do think it's Savage and Gausman in some order. If you want to give Gausman a little bit of extra rest because of the relief outing, that would be the only consideration. And obviously Pete Walker and John Schneider have such a great relationship with Kevin, and they're going to be able to talk that over and make sure that everybody's in a good position and all bought in. And I think Kevin's going to be honest with him. He says, if he says, listen, yeah, I need a little bit of extra time after the relief outing, no problem. I think they'd flip him. My sense is that Kevin will say, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
I think starting game 1 is an honor. It's something that I think most people in that Toronto clubhouse would probably say that honor belongs to Kevin Gausman on merit, and also the fact that while he pitched in relief, it was not like a 4-inning outing. It was to your point, and I heard what you said earlier. It was a shorter outing and a less taxing outing than what Logan Gilbert had in relief against the Tigers. Okay, that's a fundamentally different order right there, in my opinion. And the other thing too, that when you talk about the Jays pitching plan, this may surprise some folks. I think Bassett is in the conversation as being someone that you're going to trust again with a lead in the 7th or 8th inning. I think there's going to be a pocket of that team of the Dodger lineup that you feel good with Bassett making pitches to. And the thing, and I said this last night, you cannot walk guys. You just can't. And that's where the little conversation, and again, how do you feel about Nance, Brule? It's not as though Nance and Brule were shut down, lights out against the Yankees either. So there's other, you've got to take all these elements into consideration, and you have to ask yourself against who and in what case are you going to trust Little to get back on the mound and be able to get some left on left outs. And if you're worried about him walking Ohtani and walking Freeman, then it's a real conversation about how you're going to arrange your lineup and your overall bullpen. And do you feel more confident in Brule or Nance in throwing strikes? That's what has to happen. You have to have strikes. You cannot walk guys. And because walking, and I made this point yesterday, when you walk batters, okay, what it does is it doesn't just create a threat in that inning, it turns the lineup over. And if one more Jays pitcher had walked one more Mariner batter at some point in Game 7, Cal Raleigh is batting in the 9th inning.
Yep.
Okay? And that's what you have to avoid. It's not just the messiness of the inning itself. It's that every time you walk guys, it churns the lineup over and gives more opportunities to really good hitters. And the dudes that bat in the top part of the lineup of the Dodgers are named Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman. So those are people that you do not want to be coming up extra times if you're the Toronto Blue Jays. So I would orient my left-handed pitching decision-making about who's on the roster. The question I have is, who do I trust to throw strikes? And is it Little? Is it Brule? Is it Nance? That's the conversation. And I think that Bassett, meanwhile, has earned himself back into the circle of trust to where when they had 6 outs to go, in the eighth inning, and somewhat surprisingly had a lead. It was Chris Bassett walking in and out of that bullpen, and he did a great job. And
Yeah.
that, to me, is something that should apply to the decisions that John Schneider and Pete Walker are going to make in the next 24 hours.
What I think you're really hoping for is that Mason Fluharty can be the guy that he was against the Dodgers already this season.
Yeah.
And that
he's in a big spot. Yeah. He's there. I mean, he has shown that in terms of, if you ask a Blue Jays fan right now, who do you trust to throw strikes against Ohtani? Is it Fluharty or is it Little?
No, it's him. It's not even close.
You already have proof positive that Fluharty. Now, again, you don't want to overrate too much one at bat in August. Sure. But by the way, that one at bat is the reason why Game 1 of the World Series is in Toronto and not Los Angeles.
Yeah, it was a pretty important at bat. It felt important at the time, and it certainly feels important now.
It's real important right now.
Okay, so last one for you, John, and then I'll let you go.
Sure.
You've touched on a lot of things that the Dodgers do well, and how they line up with the Jays, right? Where you look at this thing and say, the Blue Jays have a chance. The Blue Jays obviously have a chance. Mm-hmm. If you don't think that the team that's hitting 300 throughout the postseason, that's pitched well, that has, I think, done just a lot of spectacular things in terms of facing adversity, everything, up and down. You look at the Dodgers, though, and you mention it. Like, hey, their bottom of the order is strong, just like Toronto's has been. Hey, their starting pitching staff has been historically good. Hey, as well as the Blue Jays have hit, and they've hit better than the Dodgers, you look at that Dodgers lineup, and it's terrifying, and it's full of guys that are World Series champions defending that for a reason. Is there somewhere where you actually perceive the Blue Jays to have an advantage in this series?
It's a great question. I think that it's not as much. I don't perceive the bullpen advantage clearly swinging towards Toronto, but I think it's close enough that when you consider the way that Hoffman has pitched, and I do trust. I trust Fluharty in a big spot. You also wonder about, at some point, are you able to make Scherzer available out of the pen early on in the series before a potential start later on? The Dodgers had some bullpen questions. We saw that early on in the Milwaukee series. Obviously, Roki Sasaki's been amazing when he's been in the strike zone, which has been most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And Blake Treinen has gotten more and more into a confident spot. The Dodgers have two lefties they seem to trust now out of the pen in Banda and Vesia, and I think that's something that, depending on how things play out with Bo, that you're going to be aware of about, okay, if Bo doesn't start in Game 2 against a righty, how do you then proceed, and how do you have Bo available as a pinch hitter late, or is it Davis Schneider as a pinch hitter option late? Where are there spots that I see the Jays having advantage? I think that they are making contact at an elite level in terms of putting the ball in play. I love the note about how Vladdy has more home runs and strikeouts. I'm not sure. I'll say this. I'm not sure there's anybody on the LA side of the equation who has hit as well as consistently in this postseason as Vladdy has. Mm-hmm. I think the numbers say it. I think that Ernie Clement, by the way, has become a legitimate difference-making bat for the Toronto Blue Jays in a way that, Ernie is sort of the Tommy Edman equivalent in terms of a really good, not leading man superstar, but a really good complementary player in the postseason. I think this too. You talk about Ernie's numbers. If that ball early on in Game 7 drops, that was a line shot off the bat of Ernie Clement. It's a different game, and I think that he is someone that I have come to trust in a big spot as much as almost anybody who's not named Vladdy. So I think that do I see areas where the Jays have clear advantages from a standpoint of the overall group? It's hard to say that their rotation is better than the Dodger rotation. It's hard to say that their 8th, 9th inning group is better than the Dodger group, but they're so close. They're and the areas where I say the Jays have shined are in their execution. They have been very, very good about finding ways, especially with the bottom part of the lineup. So I like the Jays' opportunities to win this series just as much as I like the Dodgers. And I think it's really, I see this thing as a toss-up.
Totally.
I see it as at least a 6-game, 7-game series. It's at least a 6-game series with a chance to go 7. And I would say to everybody in Canada, don't make plans to watch anything but baseball, I think, for the next couple weekends, because I fully expect this thing to come back to Toronto for Game 6 and 7.
Yeah, I know that, like, I'm a homer. I watch the Blue Jays more closely than any other team, but I would genuinely be shocked if this was not a competitive series or if this looked anything like the Dodgers run through the National League. I believe truly the Blue Jays and the way that they're playing right now that they are going to be the toughest opponent that the Dodgers face. And I totally
Yes.
agree with your assessment that okay, Dodgers might have advantages, but everything else is close. Jon Morosi of MLB Network. Thanks as always for making time, my friend. Appreciate it.
JD, enjoyed the conversation. Happy World Series. Enjoy the
Yes.
Fall Classic.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I will enjoy this fall classic um, much more than any in my entire life. That's a lock. So, a couple quick things off of what he said there. Number one is the Ernie Clement of it all. One of the things I love about Ernie Clement is that he's the embodiment of this Blue Jays team. A guy who not as much was expected from, someone who was doubted countless times, but someone who has provided countless spectacular moments, been immeasurably clutch, puts the ball in play, and maybe most importantly, is the emotional heartbeat of the team, is the vibe of the team, the likability of the team. Like if you were trying to distill who the Toronto Blue Jays are this season down into one player, it honestly might not be Vladdy. It might be him. Like he has been great. And I absolutely trust him in this series against the Dodgers to continue the type of performance that he has given them all playoffs long. Maybe it's not going to be a hit every single game, multi-hit every single game, but I know that he is going to be a factor in this, and you got to pray that he is ready to perform against Blake Snell, who has been, again, lights out when Ernie Clement all season long has dominated left-handing pitching to the point where, yeah, he's been among the league's best. Two is it doesn't seem like we have a lot on Springer's knee, which makes sense because he has played games and a team is going to be pretty cagey. But if there is no structural damage, then you have to assume that this rest has gotten him to a point where he can at least serviceably move around. And I'm sorry, but that's what I need from him in this series. Like that's what I need from him. And I've had people reach out to me about like all these different tricky places that Bo can play defense, and it's like he's not playing defense. John said it. That infield group was spectacular against the Mariners. They were genuinely game-changing. They turned multiple double plays, and one of the still shots that you're going to see hang on somebody's wall someday is going to be IKF doing the Dwayne Wade flyby as Andres Jimenez throws a ball to first to complete a double play. So, yeah, there's nowhere on the infield for Bo. This isn't like, well, you just move him around. He's not. I don't know how well he moves side to side. Just because we're seeing him run the bases does not mean that he's going to be able to explode off that knee laterally and make a play for you. It's just not something that you can trust. It's DH only. And frankly, I think it's got to be game one against Snell. I just do. I don't like the idea of him coming in as a pinch hit bat, especially given that he hasn't had all that many reps. Do I trust that he can come in that spot and give you something? Do I think that he actually needs to play every single game? That you could kind of talk me out of. But if he's ready to go and you're facing Blake Snell, you're going best on best. Bo Bichette's your DH, and George Springer's in the outfield. And you leave it at that. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple or on Spotify. Again, we're back on YouTube, which is awesome. I really appreciate all the people that leave thumbs up there and all the people that have welcomed it back to YouTube. It was a really important thing for me to be coming back this season. We'll take a quick break, and I want to give you some notes on what I thought about the Raptors debut, which was, again, terrific. Raps are undefeated. Did my preview yesterday and had a few talks about what the group ceiling is and what you kind of need to see from them. And last night was a really, really positive first sign. You know me, first impressions matter. And the first impression of this Toronto Raptors team, God, I'm so used to saying Toronto Blue Jays, I got to hesitate there, was a few really noticeable positives. Scotty Barnes was phenomenal. He had a terrific game. I've seen him do that before. What it is I need to see it consistently in order for me to feel like, okay, that's something that's gone to another level. What was newer, that really stood out was Emmanuel Quickly's ball movement. Some of the plays that he was making in that game, a couple of them to Grady Dick, just the way that he was selflessly moving the basketball, that he was turning down some what I thought were pretty good looks in order to create for others. And I said yesterday, kind of in passing, he's not really a point guard. He's more of a shooting guard. He's expected to be, hey, a lot of pull-up threes from him this season. This is a team that, yeah, they're going to have to score inside. The three-point shooting, I think they were 6 of 24. Might have ended up a little different than that. 6 of 25. They were 6 of 25 last night, and they still ended up dominating this basketball game because of their ability to get to the rim, but also some really clever passing and some awesome off-the-ball movement and crashing the boards. And what was notable about the way they scored last night was it felt kind of sustainable. They didn't get, again, Barnes was terrific. 22 points. RJ Barrett slashing over and over and over again, putting pressure on the Hawks' interior defense was impressive. Did make me think a little about, this is kind of a contract year for RJ Barrett. He didn't just get an extension, a little bit of a prove me, a little stick it to your hometown team that decided that they were not going to pay you the big bucks when they could have. But just, yeah, the amount of slashing options that all try to operate in similar parts of the floor, to me, when I looked at it at first, was, how is that going to work? How are all of those guys going to be able to occupy the same space? And what the reality was, at least in game one, and again, we always overstate the value of a game one in these first impressions for sure, but was how relentlessly they could just attack you in the paint with a variety of different options. Those three guys in particular being able to stress test what a defense can do inside. And that was interesting, and that is something that if that can be, I don't think they're going to score 130 points every night. I don't think that they're going to be able to shoot like that from deep and win every single night, but it didn't look flukish, which is important. Two is this team is going to be a real problem defensively for other groups. Like, they got their hands on a lot of basketballs, and I thought that they forced the Hawks to press in multiple moments and take a lot of bad looks. And that part of it, if we're talking about sustainability, that felt very, 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 very real to me. Hawks, many times in this game, looked flabbergasted with what Toronto was able to throw at them and the consistency in which Toronto played defense. And again, that is one of the hallmarks of this team, or it has to be, Darko Rajakovic and his ability to keep these guys engaged throughout the course of a regular season and to show that if you're going to draft a lot of guys who can't shoot, and you're going to have a team full of a lot of guys who are not elite shooters, let's say, not modern day design, that they can play modern day, lock it down, decisive advantage defense. And then lastly, this is more of just an impression of the Atlanta Hawks. And yeah, do I think that they're going to have a better season than what they showcased in that game? Sure. But they got mega overrated by the NBA nerd Twitter sphere who love Daniels and love Johnson and just were kind of throwing a ton of this team could finish third in the Eastern Conference. And I don't really see that. But the greater point here is the Raptors and their gap between the Eastern Conference's secondary class, which I view as below the Cavs and the Knicks right now. It's not a huge gap. They can beat anybody. And that's what I'm saying about showing that market development and finishing closer and higher up the playoff standings and why it matters so much this year. Anyways, subscribe to the podcast. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. We will see you tomorrow.